What's up, everybody? It is your host, Ben Schleiger. Little switch up. Usually I have Chris on this, but Chris is down at Missouri Days, or as I like to tease him, Misery Days, down in Fowler. So it is going to be me, Ben Schleiger, hopping on the mic, being the main guy. We're going to do a Beyond the Den episode about Big Sky preseason football rankings from the media poll and coaches poll. It was awesome that we got to be a part of it. So Chris and I got to be a part of it, and also Jacob Govero, friend of the program, Pirate Radio, fearless leader. He got to be on there as well. So pretty excited. We got to have a little powwow, a little bar sesh about what we thought about each team, and really broke it down. Definitely, I think everybody changed everybody's mind on at least one team. But looking at these rankings, they're pretty close to ours, but not quite the same. So, we had 8 out of 12 spots the same as the media poll, and 7 out of 12 the same on the coaches poll. Now, in both of those, any of the teams that were switched up or not in the right spot were right next to each other. So, not a lot of variance. I think everybody's on the same page about a lot of these teams and what tiers they're in. Just the semantics of whether they're going to be 6, 7, 8 or 8, 7, 6. Who knows where it's going to end up? But we took our best guesses. We definitely had some staunch opinions one way or another. There's a couple teams I liked, a couple teams Jacob likes, a couple teams Chris liked that we thought they could change a spot or two. But for the most part, we feel like the coaches poll and media poll is pretty good. Obviously, we think our own is a little bit better, but hey, my poll was right on there, about 8 out of 12 and 7 out of 12. I think the other guys were pretty close as well. I think Chris took some liberties to jump some teams he believes in more, but hey, if his pans out at the end of the year, that's all that matters. So we're going to jump right into it. Big Sky is doing their media days. This is being recorded late on Sunday night because kiddos come first. Family day with the kiddo. Did some good grocery shopping. Hopefully Chris had fun at Missouri Days and whatnot. So we're making sure to get this in for you right before media days. We'll see when it comes out, but be sure if you don't catch it live, that you do go back on ESPN Plus, because that's a great resource. You can check out all the teams of their designated media segments with their players that they brought with them. So go ahead and check that out. But we're going to run through, or I'm going to run through what I have and what the media and coaches poll have. So everybody across the board agreed Montana State, they're coming back as the favorites. Not any really challenge to say, there's first place votes to other teams, but really, let's be honest, they're the champs until they're not. So in the coaches poll, they got 7 out of the first place votes, and for the media poll, they got 30 of the first place votes for that as well. So pretty decent margin on both. A little bit wider in the media poll, but also there's a ton more votes in that as well. So other first place votes that went in the coaches poll was 1 to UC Davis, 2 to Montana, 1 to Northern Arizona, and 1 to Sacramento State. In the media poll, there's first place votes given to Montana with 6, UC Davis 4, Idaho 1, and Sacramento State also 1. I'm guessing that was probably Sacramento B. Ha! If anybody knows, that's kind of like the onion. But either way, even if it is a homer vote, we really talked about Sac State a lot. That really dominated our conversation. Even though they won't come till later in the conversation, we had the argument where, man, they could, as many recruits as they're bringing in with 1 4-star, and I believe it's around 23 3-star recruits, might have been up to 24 at that point as well. Also at that point in time when we're looking at submitting this votes, I believe Sac State was 56th overall in all of Division I recruiting classes. So that's pretty outstanding, especially for an FCS school to break the top 100, much less be flirting with the top 50. That's a big deal right there. Got to give some love to UC Davis. They were my second. Coaches poll also had them second, and they were third in the media poll. this is kind of where the one switch up happens, where we lose some points on the media poll. Is Montana and UC Davis are 2 and 3 for them. For the coaches, it's two. It's flipped the other way around. It is UC Davis 2, Montana 3. Really, there's a pretty staunch conversation there of UC Davis has a lot of parts, a lot of winning parts. Their tight end who made the All American list, and also I believe it was Sam Herder said that he was coming back as the second best tight end in the FCS according to Hero Sports. So shout out to them. Let me pull him up real quick, but that tight end really made a difference for us. Really, also looking at just the other complementary pieces, especially UC Davis returning a lot on the line. I think overall it's pretty impressive, the pieces they have. Now the big problem is they lose a marquee running back, Lane Larison. He was the guy. Before him, it was Alonzo Gillum. So there is a big gap, big shoes to fill, big legacies to fill. Now, can they just repeat and reload like Eastern Washington did for over a decade, it seemed, with quarterbacks? Just, hey, we found another great one. We're going to give him the rock, just pound it to him, just let him get after it. Who knows? But at this point in time, I feel like there's a lot of great pieces at UC Davis. Sure, they do lose Miles Hastings, which was a 4,000-yard passer. That is nothing to scoff at. Even though he didn't always make the best decision, he was a very dangerous quarterback. So that is another piece that weighed heavily on our conversations as well. Montana, also a quarterback controversy there. Do they use the kid who came in from USC? Do they stay with the legacy guy, Ayat? That, so some people kind of wondered, like, man, is this guy only starting because he's a legacy? Because he's very athletic, but athletic doesn't make you a quarterback, and there's a lot of concerns there, I think, in not just the Grizz community, but the Big Sky as well. Is this guy starter material? And looking at the other two quarterbacks they have in the Montana quarterback room, they're young. Everybody outside of that USC transfer is a sophomore or a freshman, and it's just, even though Ayat's listed as a sophomore, even though he's seen field time for 2 different seasons, it's just there's not a lot of confident leadership there. I think that Bobby Hauck is also on the hot seat. As much as he has had success, he hasn't had just that outright, just getting championships, getting rings. I think there's trouble brewing in Montana. I don't think he's necessarily going to be out if he doesn't do well this year, but I think there's going to be grumbles of, man, we can't get past the Cats. We can't just take the conference outright. I think that's going to be a dominating factor in the conversation if things aren't going well, as we have amazing players like Michael Wortham, absolute stud, great receiver, amazing returner, dangerous on all sides. He's just following the footsteps of other greats in Montana like Sammy Akem. He has great legacy there. And then Eli Gillum, he was freshman of the year a couple of years ago, and he's still a dangerous running back. I think him and Adam Jones pretty much unanimously ran away with the running back awards, and also were quite high in the offensive MVP race, which Jones did get awarded today. But I would not be surprised if Gillum was right there behind him in second or third place, not far off in the votes. So Montana, UC Davis, they both have a strong amount of components they bring back, just a few pieces that they're missing. And sure, Montana State, they're losing Tommy Mellott. They're going to be relying on that Stanford transfer to come in, be a stud at the quarterback position. But really, the way Montana State recruits and the way that they develop players, there's just there's such a talent gap there between them and the rest of the conference. I think Montana does well. I think they do a crazy job at getting just absolutely insanely sized guys, very athletic, very huge guys where they need it in the trenches. I think those guys are some of the best recruiters in all of the Big Sky and very well across the FCS. So, in terms of who has the most dangerous roster, I think even if you're not going chemistry or starters or anything like that, Montana State do very well. I think UC Davis and Idaho have done very well in the past. NAU, very good at finding like diamonds in the rough. I don't think anybody expected Ty Pennington to really be a force last year, and he was exceptionally good. I hate to say it, even as them being our rivals, but Pennington came up a lot in our conversations. Not necessarily, you know, him capturing a title for the Lumberjacks, but a lot of spoiler, a lot of spoiler conversations of them knocking fringe playoff teams out of contention for playoffs late in the year, and also them being a fringe playoff team. With everything being said, I know giving a lot of compliments out, I think this is going to be a down year across the Big Sky, or at least appear that way, as I feel that the top 6 are going to have to do a lot to define themselves. They're going to have to do a lot to make separation, a lot to really stretch the difference. Because Montana State, they don't have Tommy Mellott, so they're going to have an absolute athletic, gunslinging, just athlete at the quarterback position. They're going to need that to continue the same scheme and the same ferocity that they've had on offense. UC Davis, they need a competent, accurate quarterback. Comes in, boom, they're automatically a top 3 team in the Big Sky. Montana, same thing. They need a competent quarterback that knows when to throw the ball away and when to keep the team out of trouble. Don't force a pass over the middle. Rely on the run game when you need to, because you have a stud that's recognized across the league as an absolute unit since freshman year. So you need to be able to use that. Northern Arizona, they were them and Idaho were the consensus for 4 and 5. So coaches had Northern Arizona at 4 and had them at 5 in the media poll. Idaho, same thing, just swapped 5 in coaches, 4 in media. I think this one came down to a big conversation for us as well, as is the transferring Joshua Wood worthy of just giving him the reins and just assuming that he's going to come in and be an absolute just crazy starter off the bat. Idaho was there. They've been very high on cycling through quarterbacks that, even with the quarterbacks that have left the program, they say, man, this guy's still good. This guy's still good. You knock one down, another one comes up, and they keep on saying that it's just as good and that they're in good hands. I think it's going to be a real eye-opener to see how big of a hole Eck left behind. Sure, you have an alumni coach coming in and taking over, and that's great. It's great to have somebody who's familiar with the program, knows the ins and outs, knows what you're good at, what you're not good at, and has been there and done that. That's fantastic, but is pulling from the alumni and not getting a marquee coach, not getting a splash hire per se, is that going to be enough? I mean, Idaho, they recruited well, but they lost a lot in the transfer portal. It seemed like they might have been one of the teams that lost the most this year, besides the obvious NFL talent that moved on from a lot of these teams, or just those really significant seniors that put in 4 years worth of hard work and stats across the boards. Idaho, I think, suffered quite a bit. NAU, I think they're young enough. They didn't lose too many pieces that were necessarily groundbreaking or cornerstones. I think everything that went well for them can be reproduced, and everything that they fell apart on, that they can get away from. They can be able to remedy those mistakes and move on from it. I think the most stark, the blackest eye on their resume from last year is just that terrible playoff game against Tarleton. I believe I think they lost 24-0, or it was 24-0 at one point. I think that was the worst mark on their record. Is just couldn't finish it out. You got two there. You ended the year with a great record despite so many consequences being against them, and being a young team. That was very impressive on their part, but at this point they just have to find a way to regroup and move on. Now, here's everybody's wild card. Here's everybody's newsmaker, the $50 million NIL, lurking in the shadows, getting denied by the FBS giant. Everybody's wondering, is Sacramento State the real deal? I'm not sold on it. I'm not sold. I think the NCAA told them, no because they didn't believe in it. They said, sure, you might have $50 million this year, but what about next year? Are you going to be able to sustain this? Is this something that you can keep going, or is this just a one-time infusion of cash that makes everything just right as rain for this year only? I hate to say it, that's a fair point. The lack of a FBS invite as well definitely sucks. If UC Davis can get all of their sports moved to the Mountain West, but still not get a football invite, even though their stadium is immaculate and could definitely be expanded to further add to the capacity, wants, and needs that the FBS usually goes for. If they literally get every single box checked except for maybe just need to look a little bit better financially on paper, even though I don't know if they're an R1 institution, but they're very close to being a tier 1 research institution, especially in their fantastic animal science program. If UC Davis can hit all of those pieces but not even get a Mountain West invite, I don't know what you do for Sac State. I mean, congrats on the recruiting class. Congrats on the strange infusion of cash that brings all of these celebrities to campus. But I'm not sold on it, and I don't think that anybody who saw the NCAA ruling should be offended by it either. Now, what does that come out to on the football field? Really, we're shooting in the dark at this point. I feel like 6 is a generous but fair position. Now, last year they were 3-9, 1-7 in conference. So to assume that they're going to all of a sudden shoot up to at least 3-5 and 4-8, because Eastern was in the 6th spot last year as 3-5 in conference and 4-8 overall. Now that's doable, but it was also a strange year where Montana was 15-1, UC Davis 11-3, Idaho 10-4, and Northern Arizona squeaked in there with 8-5. Montana was 9-5 as well, with 3 losses in conference. It's doable to get to 6. I feel like the ones voting above 6 are going 100% off of the transfer portal and the new coach coming in. Now, granted, the UNLV ex-UNLV coach, very much into high tempo, high octane, just in your face, smash mouth offensive football. That's gonna bode well in the Big Sky. But just because you have a fiery offense doesn't mean that you have all of the pieces that you need to succeed. You're gonna have to do more than that. So, unfortunately, even with a fantastic recruiting class, a flashy coach, a influx of stupid cash, and a 4-star receiver coming in, I'm not sold that they're going to go more than 6. Like, that's just asking so many. Of course, every recruiting class, you're going to have a new crop of people from all over, from all walks of life, all different races, creeds, and etc. that you got to get some sort of chemistry with, and that you got to gel. And even if you don't like a guy, you got to suck it up and go get a first down, or you got to suck it up and make sure the other team doesn't get a first down. So, of course, there's always that, but Sacramento State is literally playing with hydrochloric acid here. They could either make a fantastic weapon out of themselves that burns the whole rest of the league, or they could not be careful enough with it and burn themselves. Really, I think 6 is fair. I think everybody in the group said that it would be possible for them to go all the way up to first. It is possible. I don't see it happening. I think everybody's really high on Rashada coming from Georgia. That's fantastic. But also, we've seen it at UNC. We had a double-digit amount of FBS transfers come down to us when Eddie Mack first got here. Yeah, let's put the Eddie Mack qualms aside. That many FBS players came down, and the next year came down, and we had a record amount of FBS drop-down players on our team, and it still amounted to 3 wins. Now, granted, we are bottom of the barrel in the FCS. Chris, do your homework. We're gonna put the who's our equivalent or who could be worse than us to the test. Not this week, obviously, because you're on vacation, but next week we'll see what our examples are and compare and contrast the D1 tenures, because we are historically bad, and that sucks. But every year's a new year. Every year's new optimism. Just going to spoil it for you, Bears fans. We are 12 in everybody's poll. We deserve to be 12 in everybody's poll. If anybody put us 11th, it's probably Chris, which, like, I don't blame you. Like, good on you, buddy. Like, my homer picks were in the all conference picks. So that's where I decided to leave it. It's just one win in 2 years is tough. I don't believe Cal Poly is a better program than us. I don't believe that Portland State is a better football team than us, but everything on the field says otherwise. And of course, we had quarterback hell. We were in purgatory, but also getting slammed over the head with brimstone. So last year was as bad and as unproductive and unmeasurable in so many ways of any type of success. But when you have 5 quarterbacks and your line has to learn how to work with 5 quarterbacks and your receivers have to learn how to get open for 5 quarterbacks, yeah, you're going to be 12. It's the guys try their hearts out, but there's only so much you can do in a situation that just hates you. You know, it was quarterback hell. We added to some of that stupidness. There was some coaching decisions that should have and could have been better. But where we were was our own doing and nature's fate that just sometimes people are going to get hurt. Sometimes stuff happens. And this year, we're going to have to be a lot better at adapting. But let's not look all the way at the bottom of the barrel. Let's keep on going back to it. Number 7, across the board for coaches and media, was Idaho State. This is kind of where it got a little bit murky, and our polls across the board matching up. So coaches had Idaho State, Weber State, Eastern Washington. Media had Idaho State, Eastern Washington, Weber State. For me personally, I had Eastern, Idaho State, Weber. Now, I think you could put these teams in each one of them, put their face on the side of a die, roll it in a backgammon cup, and throw it on the board. I don't think there's a lot of distinguishing factors between this. The votes on here will say slightly different. Idaho State has definitely a better margin across the board than the third team out of these mentioned, but I don't think it's a clear consensus across the league. I think Idaho State, they're getting a lot better. Cody Hawkins is doing a great job. He really is coming into his own as a coach and doing a lot with little. So Idaho State, kudos to you guys. You guys are adapting a lot better than UNC is. I think you guys have a good offensive scheme that is just complex enough and just dangerous enough to mess with that you can score points, get where you need to get, and if everybody's following the scheme and if everybody executes, it's a good plan. Defensively, still a bit to be desired there, but I feel like Idaho State is on the right track. I didn't personally put them above above Eastern. Eastern was my first of this trio, mostly because of Jared Taylor. I don't think he's a fantastic quarterback, but I feel like he's a seasoned enough quarterback that he can go out and get Eastern a couple of wins. Now, is that going to be any better than 4-8 last year? Who knows? I mean, it's the Big Sky is a tumultuous league, obviously, but looking back at it, I mean, there was some close games. Eastern was more dangerous than they really deserve to be, and I think everybody needs to take notice of how close they really were. Yes, the record was bad, but if you're looking back at it, they had overtime loss to Drake. That sucks. It's not a good look. Losing to a non-scholarship school, terrible look for the Big Sky. But that was an overtime loss. They have a 4-point loss to Southeastern Louisiana. Then you look at it, FBS game, fine, whatever. You can write that off. 3-point loss to Montana. Montana finished the year, got into the playoffs. Sacramento State, not a good showing there, won by 7. UC Davis only lost by 10. So, I mean, again, another good showing. Not a win, but a good showing. Same thing, lost by 10 to Idaho. Montana State pulled a little bit further ahead. They put an awful whooping on the Bears with absolutely no players. And then they put a bad beats whooping on Idaho State, 77-42. Again, Idaho State can score points. It just defense is not quite there. But to finish out the year, they did lose a pretty decisive game to NAU 30-18. So this year, looking at their schedule, it is pretty disgusting. Starting out, Incarnate Word, Boise State, Northern Iowa, and then Western Illinois, winnable, Montana State, and then they just go into conference from there, and they have to play Montana State, Sac State, Montana. Sure, they get us, Cal Poly, and Portland State, and Idaho's in there as well. Idaho and Weber. So really a 50-50 schedule on there with a hard out of conference. I think we can expect to see Eastern exactly where they were. Tossing it up with Idaho State, I think you could flip a coin at those. Weber State, they developed so many good NFL players. There's so many notable players that have come from Weber State and just some absolutely all-conference players over the years. Rashid Shaheed was the Devin Hester of the Big Sky, essentially. And he went on to the NFL. There's been a lot of good D linemen and linebackers. Weber State, they recruit and they develop, but they don't keep their players. A lot like us, unfortunately. But Weber State, they're not getting back to their winning ways when they had Jay Hill. It's just Jay Hill left and the wins left with him. So I don't know what Weber State's missing. I don't know if Mickey Mental is just not the answer. it's easy to just shoot the coach and move on, but the talent comes in. Like Rookie Munoz, there was talent there, but he wasn't developed well enough to roll over that sophomore slump, and eventually left the program and whatnot. And it's just there's good players that come through that program that they're just not they're not getting over the hump with mental. So whether it's just they need to recruit better, they need to go about developing players in a different way, Weber State has a lot of ground to make up. Now, talking about a lot of ground to make up, we're talking about the bottom three. And unfortunately, that was consensus with almost everybody's poll except for Chris's, which, thank you, Chris. You're probably the reason that UNC has 57 points in the media poll instead of 56. So, shout out to Chris. Granted, we will find out how many media voters there is accumulatively. Actually, I can do some quick math. But either way, UNC is the bottom of the barrel. For reference, UNC 57 points in the media poll. The next closest is Cal Poly with 94. After that, Portland State 140. For reference, in the coaches poll, it is closer by ratio, but not in the terms of anything other than volumes. UNC 15 votes to Cal Poly's 25 to Portland State's 32. So we're not going anywhere until Lamb, Castelli, and all the rest of the guys, Chapa, pull us out of the hole that we've been in. So UNC, we're at the bottom. I think we know that story. Portland State and Cal Poly. Portland State, you don't even have your own stadium. You can't even reliably rent out the Portland Timbers' very nice MLS stadium. You drive 13 miles, which Chris said is roughly 30 minutes, sometimes during the day when he went on his trip with Pirate Radio. 30-minute drive just to get to the stadium, just so you can get your ass kicked every Saturday. It's just, it's a bad state of the program. Bruce Barnum, great Big Sky coach, good history, but really, besides his first year, there just hasn't been much done there. Portland State is just checking a box by having a team there other than Portland University. Portland State is just living off their old dreams of, I think it was Julius Thomas that played football his first and only year at Portland State, and then got drafted into the NFL, did some time with the Broncos. It's that's probably the most notable story that they have. I think Dante Sacheray got a tryout in the CFL, didn't really follow him afterwards, but he is not in town anymore. The most notable player besides him in the last number of years was Anthony Amos. He made a lot of noise, got an NFL invite, and just never really took off from there. So Portland State is just one of those, it's like a sad sparkler. It shows up, it sparkles, and then it goes away. And you're like, oh, wow, that was a great $5 for 30 seconds. So Portland State, I don't know what to say about you. Not trying to hate on you, even though Chris loves to, say that I'm the Pacific Northwest hater. Pizza over Starbucks every time. But outside of that, they've fallen into being comfortable being at the bottom. I think the Bears were at least struggling and doggy paddling and just trying to keep our head above water. We're at least struggling and making effort. Portland State happened among some timbers in the wreckage of the Titanic and are just kind of happy on their door that they can barely fit on. So they're just kind of chilling in the water, just waiting to be rescued. Like in UNC's case, you can't wait to be rescued. You have to put in some effort, and you need some help, and you need to get a little bit lucky. And Portland State hasn't gotten help and hasn't gotten lucky, so they've just kind of been floating around the bottom, just circling the drain, but not quite in the gutter yet. So I don't know. There's not a lot of great things I can say on the roster. There's not a lot of interesting things about even who could be a potential all conference from them. We'll go back and scour the list, but there wasn't many players from them to nominate. There wasn't many players from there to vote for. So just all in all, I did give a vote to Isaiah Green from Portland State, but really, there's not a lot to get excited about. Spencer Elliott on the D line, he has been impressive, but really, there's outside of those two guys, Portland State's just kind of uh, I wouldn't even call it a wildfire. It's a controlled burn that just barely jumped outside the line. Like, we're not worried about it. We'll just get a bucket of water. Unfortunately, that's the state of the program there. Cal Poly, they keep on recycling coaches. They keep on trying different Big Sky grades to come in, revamp the program. They're trying to still find some sort of modicum of a success outside of their triple option days. So it is what it is there. That's still just, it's a revamp and a rebuild, a lot like UNC. They're getting more success and having more um, having more ultimate success overall. I mean, shoot, they at least won 3 games last year. So them and Portland State both won 3 games. Cal Poly was 2-6 in conference. Portland State 3-5. So kudos to them. Kudos to those guys being a step above the bottom. Now UNC, that's where we're gonna look to be. Golly gee, I really hope we can beat Chatham State. There shouldn't be a contest there. It should be at least a 2-touchdown victory. So UNC should have at least one win next year that isn't having to be caused by 3 turnovers in the end zone from Weber State. So hopefully UNC will not be 12 at the end of the year. But that is where we started, and hopefully that is not where we finish. In terms of who was a all conference from UNC, all we had was Cam Chapa, but Chapa had a fantastic freshman year, a handful of interceptions that, as a true freshman, that's pretty unheard of. So, absolutely love that we got him. Just going to run through the Big Sky All Conference team real quick, at least the notable ones. Interesting pick, quarterback Ty Pennington, NAU. He got picked over Jared Taylor from Eastern Washington, Joshua Wood transferring in, and Jaden Rashada transferring in to Sac State. So Ty Pennington was one of the 2 returning Big Sky quarterbacks, and he got it. Interesting. Love. Chris isn't going to like it, but I love that the conference stayed with a conference player or a player who was in the conference last year as a leader and who got the vote. So haters going to hate, but I think Sac State's SID did a fantastic job. You should pat yourself on the back for nominating over 20 players, but also over 60 or even 2/3 of those players were not on Sac State last year. So it is players to watch. It is a big deal of those guys coming into the conference, but just as a conference homer, I didn't want to vote you. Majority of your representatives I did not vote for because I felt like there was a better returning Big Sky player. Now, talking about big time returners, Adam Jones and Eli Gilman, both those guys took the running back. Coulter May, shout out fullbacks, got Weber State a vote there. Receivers, again, apologies for any pronunciations. I don't have the pronunciation guide in front of me, but game day, if we play you, I promise I'll get your name right. Sam Batu from UC Davis, Taco Dollar, Montana State, Michael Briscoe, Cal Poly. Shout out, Cal Poly does have a shining light in Briscoe. So those guys took receiver. Winston Williams, that was the receiver, or that was the tight end I was telling you guys about. Sam Herder pegged as the second best returning tight end in the FCS. So probably watch him for some absolutely great highlights this year. And I do have to apologize, Tanner Beeman from Portland State. So Portland State, I guess you did have 3 guys to watch this year. His stats were just far and above everybody else in the second position for tight end. But I think Winston Williams is going to run away with that. In terms of offensive linemen, not going to bore you with the names, but Montana State got 1 shout out. Weber State got a shout out. Idaho State representative, Idaho, and 2 from UC Davis. Again, UC Davis has a lot of playmaker positions that came back, as well as trench. So that ultimately was why I put them second, and that got rewarded in the all-conference team. Looking at the defense real quick, there's a lot of those guys. You don't always know their names, but you know when they're there because they make a big difference. Montana State had 2 guys representing them on the defensive line. Cal Poly got a representative. NAU, Eastern, and Idaho closed it out. I think almost consensus. I liked everybody on here except for Idaho. I might have voted differently on that one. Oh, I did not. I did vote for Idaho, but I voted for a different player, which I was extremely surprised did not make the list. I was pretty sure that Parham from Idaho would be a shoe-in, but all conference votes went a different way. So Paul Brott, Montana State, Kenneth Eden, the 4th, Montana State, Ethan Rodriguez, Cal Poly, Micah Carrion, NAU, and Ty Jackson, Eastern Washington. I think this is going to be a heavy D-line year. As far as positions to watch, I think offense, it's going to be a running back and tight end year for sure, unless somebody has a breakout year at receiver or quarterback. And then looking at defense, I think D-line is far and away the most impressive position. There could be some surprises at corner. Obviously, Cam Chapa was a fantastic surprise for Bears fans last year, pulling in multiple interceptions, being a young threat early in the season early in the year that we didn't expect to have. So thankfully for Chapa and for Bears fans, we had somebody to look forward to. Looking at linebacker, kind of the usuals there. We had Bait and Wing, Montana, Porter Connors, UC Davis. Didn't even know the kid still had eligibility. It seems like the Connors have just been dominating Big Sky defenses for a decade at this point. Isaiah King, Idaho, Brandon Wong, NAU, Nathan Reynolds, Idaho State. Talking about Connors again, I didn't know Rex Connors was gonna. Well, okay, I got him mixed up. I think Porter might be a little bit younger, but Rex Connors, just seems like a Big Sky constant. If you're going to talk about Big Sky and defensive threats, Rex Connors is one of the biggest ones out there, and I think that was duly noted and duly rewarded in the defensive MVP. A little foreshadowing there. But him, Mason Rivera of Cal Poly, Cam Chapa, NAU, Dijon Wells, Eastern Washington, Isaiah Green, Portland State, and Mason Young, Idaho State closes out the defense. As far as special teams, I think that was a shoe-in. I don't think anybody had to think too hard about that except for the all-around player, which I thought was a strange category, but you gotta have those strange categories because sometimes people pop off in weird ways. UC Davis kicker, congrats. NAU Ben Diakila, punter. He outdid us last year. One of the best punters in the FCS as a whole. Same with these 2 guys, Michael Wortham, Montana for kick return, and Taco Dowler for punt return, Montana State. Those 2 dominated the FCS. I don't see why they're not going to dominate again. Grayson Pibble, Montana for long snapper. Trevor Thurman, Eastern Washington, for special player, and then all around player Michael Wortham, Montana. I think that's a worthy pick. He's going to be a starting receiver and a starting returner. So between him and Taco Dollar, they're going to be possibly Gilliam if he's getting any special teams returns. Obviously, those guys are going to be the all-purpose yards type guys for sure. So, getting late. Here's Bears fans and FCS and Big Sky fans. Thanks for joining me. We should have Chris back next weekend, but he had to get down there and represent Fowler. So hopefully he didn't get into too much trouble down there. And we're going to close out for the night. So as usual, like, subscribe, comment, share. Make sure your mom's friend watches us as well. Anyways, we are going to log off for the night. Any nasty emails or inboxes, send to me. Good night.